You are the sum of the five people you spend the most time with. It's one of those comments or quotes that shows up on mugs and Instagram tiles. What if we stopped scrolling and actually thought about what that means? Because here's the truth. In my experience as an officer in special forces, as a high performance coach, and a student of behavioral science, this idea does actually hold some weight. But it's deeper than just the five people that you spend the most time with. It's actually about the energy, mindset, values, and influence of those around you. And it's not just a personal growth concept. It's actually all about high performance, not just for teams, but for leaders and for anyone chasing high standards. So the question I want you to ask yourself today is, are the five people I spend my most time with, are they helping me be successful in my mission, or are they holding me back from success? Now, in social psychology, this is called social contagion. These are pretty much invisible forces that shape how we think, how we act, and how we perform based on those actually in our collective group, those around us. We mirror behaviors, often unconsciously, and it's not just peer pressure, it's actually peer presence. So I'm going to give you a quick story about my selection course back in the day. I learned this about the people you hang around the hard way. The first time that I trained for selection, it was all by myself back in the battalion. And sure, I'd ticked the boxes. I'd done all the runs, the pack marches, the weight sessions, all the PT, but it wasn't very sharp. It wasn't very focused. And if I'm honest with myself, I really didn't set myself up for success at all. I was just going through the motions. And the other thing is I had no one checking on me. I had no one to gauge myself against. There was no one to push me to go harder at all. And worst of all, when I think about it, I had no one to hold me accountable for the things that I said I was accountable for. But the second time around was a different story altogether. I trained with a group of guys. The whole platoon went through this. They were all hungry. We all competed against each other, but we did have each other's backs as well. We shared tips on PT, on nutrition, on equipment. We shared our failures and we shared our wins, and we made each other better. We held extra sessions for those struggling in some areas, and we tapered back sessions if we thought we were really strong in those other areas. And it really was about a shared ambition, if I'm honest. Iron sharpens iron. That's true. And during the actual course, I don't think we even needed words to help buoy each other up. We just kept showing up for each other in silence through every activity. And it's similar too if you think about Ironman triathlon training. If you're training with a group of people who are lazy, they ditch sessions, they don't do the long rides, they don't put in the work, they don't know about nutrition, they go out drinking on the weekends, things like that, you're not going to do as well in the event as if you hung around with five athletes, people who held each other accountable, who understand nutrition, who understand the training load each week, did skip sessions. If you hang around with those five people, their professionalism washes off over you. You start acting like an athlete. There's solid science behind this as well. The science of influence. It's social networks don't just connect us, they actually shape us. Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler's research on social networks found that things like obesity, smoking, and even happiness are socially contagious. If your friends smoke, you're probably going to smoke. If your friends are overweight, you're probably making bad food choices yourself. If your friends are fit, no doubt that's something you're sharing and you're getting fit or you are fit. This social contagion is really powerful. And it's not just direct relationships. It's ripple effects. So by that, for leaders, this concept should blow your mind, because your team's performance, their whole ceiling might not be about capability. It might be about culture by association. Who are your people spending time with? Who are they learning from? Who are they tolerating in the team? Right. Now, I've seen leaders unintentionally cap their team's performance because they didn't curate the right energy in the room. They didn't design the right environment for everyone to show up and be themselves. They hired for skills, not standards. And that's an absolute mistake. In this week's newsletter, I'm going to challenge the readers to do the 5-10-10 audit. Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with? And then I want you to be brutally honest about, are they giving you energy? Are they taking energy away from you? Or is it a little bit of nothing in the middle, right? Who are the 10 people that impact your mood? Who are 10 people that influence your thinking? And this could be social media or mentors. I've talked about hacking your mentors before. And then ask, are they aligned with the future you're building? And if not, why not? If the answer is no, it's time for some boundaries, not guilt. Just a final thought. We often focus on self-leadership, and that does matter, but you can't out-discipline a toxic environment. Your ceiling really is your circle. So you need to choose very wisely of who those 5 people are that you hang around the most. Now, I'm going to do an interview with a ChatGPT podcast host who I've created, and she's going to ask me 7 questions that I've put together, and we'll see how we go from there. Hope you enjoy this.
Today, I'm joined by Bram Connolly, leadership expert, former special operations officer, and someone who knows firsthand the power of your environment. We're diving into a concept that's simple on the surface, but profound in practice. You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Bram, great to have you on. Let's kick off with question 1. Why do you think this idea has stuck around so long? You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah, because I think it feels true. But more importantly, when you stop and audit your life patterns, the standards that you hold, the excuses that you allow, and these things are all mirrored by the people closest to you. You are the sum of the parts of the 5 closest people, perhaps the 10 people who influence you, and then a broader selection of people who are your friends, but specifically those 5 people, because it feels about right.
Yeah, that rings true. And I like how you stretched it beyond just 5. Influence isn't always linear. It comes in layers. Those 5 might shape your habits, but the 10 who influence you, they shape your mindset. That broader network either raises your ceiling or reinforces your limits. Question 2, how do you differentiate between people who truly influence you and those who just take up space in your life?
Okay, so I think you have to look at every interaction and the energy that you either have at the end of the interaction, and that could be that you don't have any energy, or it could, and they're robbing you of that energy, or it could be that you walk away from something feeling really inflated and really pumped. So if you're sharper, clearer, more focused, or are you drained, distracted, and doubtful, that pretty much tells you everything about the people within that sphere, those 5 people.
That's such a clean filter. Energy is honest. You can't fake how someone makes you feel after an interaction. And the danger is, we sometimes normalize the drainers because they've just always been there. But high performance and emotional drag don't coexist for long. Question 3. What surprised you the most about your selection course experience in relation to this idea?
I think based on the fact that I went through my selection course with the whole platoon, and we were all trying to not only outdo each other,
Take
but
your
also...
time, Bram. No rush.
Okay.
Let it flow when you're ready.
Sure. Thanks for interrupting I hope my sentence didn't interrupt your interruption. I think that silent support was more powerful than loud motivation. Just knowing someone had your back changed the way I showed up.
Fair call. That point about silent support really hits. In high stakes environments, it's not about noise, it's about presence. When the people around you are dialed in and showing up, even without saying a word, that creates gravity. It's motivating without being performative. Question 4. How can leaders apply this idea practically at work?
I think it's really important to maybe do disc profile, something like that, but understand the makeup of your team, have the right balance of team members working together, and then curate their proximity to each other. Put high standard people in key areas where others have access to them, and then design those rituals, those behaviors which you want to become contagious, and then get them to model those. Don't just hire talent. You need to build ecosystems.
That's gold. Don't just hire talent, build ecosystems. It flips leadership from being about managing individuals to designing environments. And that piece about curating proximity, that's where influence happens, in the day-to-day, not the strategy offsite. Question 5. What would you say to someone who feels loyal to relationships that no longer serve who they're becoming?
I think loyalty is really noble, but if we go back to the way that people make you feel before, if you don't feel that they're part of your mission and that you're going to be successful based on their friendships and interactions, then you have to see them as someone who's hindering that success. Because of that, I think you don't want to accept mediocrity from your friends. And you can love someone, you can love your mates, but you still have to set boundaries, especially if their behaviors impact your performance. That's why I would be very intentional about curating those 5 people.
That's such a powerful reframe. It's not disloyal to set boundaries. It's respectful to both people. You're honoring your mission without diminishing the relationship. And you're right, mediocrity is contagious, but so is excellence. And you've got to choose which one you're passing on. Question 6. Are online influences like podcasts, thought leaders, or creators just as powerful as in-person ones?
That is a great question, and I didn't set that up. That's a really good question. I think they're more important. And the reason that I say that is because they're going into your brains daily. I often say you should try and hack your mentors, and your mentors don't have to be people that know you. Especially Scott Galloway is someone who I look up to, Adam Grant, and there's others. And I think that because you literally are letting people speak into your brain daily, you need to choose voices that align with your values, but also your mission, where you see yourself going into the future. There's no point listening to someone spewing hate for entertainment and not think that's registering some sort of ideas in your brain.
Exactly. It's like mental nutrition. You wouldn't eat garbage every day and expect to perform well. So why let those ideas take up space in your head? And I love that idea of hacking your mentors. You're essentially building a virtual board of directors for your life. And that's a smart play for anyone serious about growth. Question 7. How often do you think someone should audit their circle of influence?
At least twice a year, or any time that you feel stuck. Because when you're stagnant, it's often environmental. It can usually be because of the environment, or it can be because of that friend base that are holding you down. And it only takes one new person into your group that can really challenge your ways of thinking, have you think outside the box and start looking around corners. When someone's giving you new information that you hadn't thought of before, that's testing what you believe to be true, that can completely change your trajectory. So yeah, I think at least twice a year or whenever you're stuck.
That's spot on. It's not just a check-in, it's a circuit breaker. When you feel stuck, it's easy to blame yourself, but sometimes it's the voices around you that are too familiar, too safe, too static. And like you said, one new perspective can completely change the game. Final question. Number 8. What's one small thing someone can do this week to start shifting their circle in the right direction?
Spend a few hours less with someone who drains you and spend a few hours more with and listen to and learn from people who pick you up. That swap matters more than you think. And also, I've got an email list, my trusted 10 There are 10 people who I will email once a month to tell them how things are going. They don't get to choose if they're on the email list or not. I've curated it myself, and they're just people I want to keep engaged. I think that's important to put good stuff out into the world.
That's such a practical and powerful move. Curating a trusted 10. It's proactive. It's not waiting for the right circle to form. It's creating it. And that small energy shift, spending just a little more time with those who lift you, it compounds fast. That's leadership in action, not theory. Bram, this has been a masterclass. Thanks for being open, sharp, and real. As always, let's leave listeners with this reminder. Your circle is your ceiling. Choose wisely.
Thanks very much. And thanks everyone for tuning in to this week's In Hindsight podcast. I hope you enjoyed the ChatGPT interview of me. She's been working with me for a few weeks now. It's great. And if you enjoyed this podcast, then the newsletter comes out tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. That's going to have some more insights. And also, just big shout out to Man of War Skincare for sponsoring this edition of In Hindsight. Thanks very much.
Beautifully wrapped, Bram. That was smooth, sharp, and grounded. You brought clarity, personal insight, and action all in one conversation. I'll clip this into a polished outro if you ever want to use it for the final edit. That's it for this episode of In Hindsight. If today gave you something to think about, imagine what you'll take away from the newsletter. It drops tomorrow. Big thanks again to Man of War Skincare, built for warriors, made to perform. Until next time, lead well, live intentionally, and remember, your circle is your ceiling. Close quote. Let me know if you want help producing the episode page, transcript, or teaser copy for socials.
Yeah, clearly I just left that in there because I like listening to her voice. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope that was as cool as I thought it was. I really enjoyed that. All those questions I just put in there and said, ask me these questions, and then I provided the answers. So that was good. Although there was a question in there she snuck in that I didn't ask. So anyway, you get that.